If you love HFY stories and high-stakes sci-fi, hit that like button, drop a comment telling us your favorite alien species, and don't forget to subscribe for more epic uploads. Now, let's begin. Evan Hale didn't flinch when the dropship doors peeled open and the metallic tang of the Zertal Apex Combat Academy hit him like hot breath from a furnace. Rows of towering reptilian cadets stood waiting, their scales gleaming under the red suns, their slitted eyes narrowing with disbelief. Nothing here was built for a human. The landing pad alone seemed ready to swallow him whole, a jagged arena of stone and steel meant for species twice his height and 3 times his weight. Yet Evan stepped forward with the calm confidence of a man who had volunteered for places far worse. The moment his boots touched the ground, the whispering started, vocal clicks, low growls, the rasp of claws on armor. The cadets spread apart as the Academy's lead instructor approached. Commander Threx was a creature carved from war, massive shoulders plated with bone ridges, each movement deliberate and predatory. He circled Evan the way a starving beast circles the lone animal foolish enough to wander into its den. "A human," Threx said, voice grinding like stone. "The first prey-built species to set foot here in 200 cycles." He leaned close, the heat of his breath prickling against Evan's skin. "Do you understand where you stand, soft-skinned one? No one beats a predator here. Not in training. Not in challenge. Not even by accident." Evan met the commander's stare, unfazed. "Why not?" The courtyard fell silent. Some cadets hissed as if insulted by the very shape of his words. Evan simply straightened his jacket, scanning the academy with a soldier's eye, watchtowers bristling with motion sensors, sparring pits stained dark, suspended bone cages used for endurance tests. Everything radiated danger. Everything promised death. He'd been in war zones that felt friendlier. Threx bared his teeth in a grim approximation of amusement. "Your arrogance will be short-lived. Survival here requires instincts your species never evolved. You are too small, too slow, too fragile. Or just different," Evan replied. The commander turned away with a low rumble, but the cadets weren't done testing their new curiosity. One in particular pushed through the crowd, a mountain of emerald scales and corded muscle. Rhaeg Vosk, champion of his cohort, 6-time victor of the Bone Trials, and a creature who looked as though the universe had built him specifically to terrify others. He towered over Evan, pupils tightening to slits of cold disdain. "You smell of fear," Rhaeg growled. Evan tilted his head. "You smell like someone who never met deodorant." The courtyard erupted in sharp clicks and rumbling laughter, the alien equivalent of a shocked gasp. Rhaeg's nostrils flared. His shadow swallowed Evan, yet Evan didn't give him the satisfaction of stepping back. Instead, he lifted his chin, examining him like he was measuring a doorway he planned to walk through. "You won't last one cycle," Rhaeg said. "You'll run home the moment the Academy shows you what real predators are." Evan shrugged. "Guess we'll find out." Before Rhaeg could respond, a deafening horn blared, and the cadets moved into formation with automatic precision. The orientation march began. Evan joined the line, though he looked like a toy soldier among towering beasts. As they crossed the grounds, holographic displays flickered to life around them, showing past trials, the tearing of flesh, the crushing of bone, cadets falling and rising again in brutal cycles that shaped the Academy's reputation. This place didn't train warriors. It forged nightmares. Evan absorbed every detail with calm deliberation. Others watched him, waiting for panic or at least hesitation, but he kept pace with steady steps. When the group passed a sparring pit where 2 cadets fought with talons and serrated weapons, Evan paused for half a second. One fighter misjudged a strike and was thrown against the wall with bone-crushing force. Blood splattered the sand. The injured cadet struggled to rise, only to have the instructor shove him back into battle. "Fall again," the instructor roared, "and you forfeit your right to stand at all." Evan's jaw tightened. He'd seen men break in combat, but even the cruelest human regiment didn't treat its own like disposable meat. Here weakness wasn't punished, it was erased. Threx noticed his stare. "If you think our methods brutal, you will not survive here." "I think they're inefficient," Evan said. "But I'm not here to change your academy." Threx's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you here, human?" Evan didn't hesitate. "To finish the program." Rhaeg scoffed so loudly several cadets jumped. "You? Finish? You won't even finish the first trial." Evan turned and something in his voice shifted, not defiant, not reckless, but dangerously assured. "Then sign me up." The courtyard froze. Threx lifted his head sharply. "Sign you up for what?" "The predation gauntlet," Evan said. Gasps swept through the ranks. Even hardened predators recoiled. The gauntlet wasn't a trial, it was a death sentence designed for species born with claws, armor, and predatory instinct. Cadets trained for years before attempting it. Many never did. Threx's voice dropped into a low growl. You are not authorized to request the gauntlet. Then authorize me, Evan replied. Raig stepped forward, incredulous. Do you even know what it is, human? Evan looked up at him. A test. A challenge. And an opportunity. Raig's throat vibrated with a rumble that walked the line between anger and reluctant fascination. You truly wish to die quickly. Evan gave a faint, infuriating smile. I intend to finish what I start. For a long moment, Threx said nothing. Then, with a heavy exhale that rippled through his bone plates, he activated the registration terminal. A holographic seal shimmered in the air. Very well, Threx said. Human Evan Hale, you are hereby entered into the predation gauntlet. Your attempt will begin at dawn. Raig muttered something in his native tongue, something that sounded like a prayer or a curse. Evan looked toward the sprawling labyrinth visible beyond the training grounds, its jagged silhouette rising like a hungry beast waiting to swallow him whole. Fear flickered at the edge of his thoughts, but he pushed it aside. Not because he was fearless, but because he never let fear make decisions for him. Threx dismissed the cadets, but many lingered to watch the human who had just volunteered for a trial even predators feared. Evan felt their stares as he walked toward the barracks, the suns lowering behind him and casting his frame in long shadows. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The academy had already decided his odds. Tomorrow he would give it a reason to rethink them. Dawn on Zertal arrived like a blade being drawn, the twin suns sharpening the academy's jagged silhouettes and illuminating the labyrinth known as the Predation Gauntlet. Evan stood at its entrance, the cold air vibrating with the hum of the systems deep within. Behind him, cadets gathered on the observation tiers, their scaled bodies coiled with anticipation. None spoke, but their silence carried the same message. The human would not exit this place alive. Raig Vosk leaned against the railing, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. He had spent the night replaying the human's decision in his mind, trying to understand what strange flaw, or strength, pushed Evan toward certain death. He didn't believe humans were predators. But he was beginning to suspect they were something far more unpredictable. Commander Threx approached Evan and studied him with an analytical gaze. Once you enter, the gauntlet activates in full predatory mode. You will be hunted. You will be tested. The drones respond to biological aggression signatures. They will see you as an inferior target and attempt to dispatch you quickly. Retreat is forbidden. Good thing I didn't come to retreat, Evan said. Threx stared for one long moment before tapping his wrist console. The gauntlet doors split open with a low groan, revealing a dim corridor that pulsed with red sensors like the eyes of something waking from slumber. Evan stepped forward, and the doors sealed behind him with an ominous finality. Inside, the air was dense and metallic. The floor vibrated underfoot as the gauntlet scanned him, analyzing muscle density, bone structure, reaction speed, and heart rhythm. The system chirped once, almost confused by the odd data set it detected. Then the lights snapped to white. The hunt began. A high-pitched whir cut through the silence. Evan dove behind a fractured pillar just as the first drone streaked through the corridor. Its sleek body was shaped like a predatory insect, limbs ending in serrated claws, optical sensors glowing a chilling blue. It landed with predatory grace and scanned the corridor. Evan kept his breathing controlled. He didn't stand a chance in brute force, but he didn't need to. Drones were fast, but they were also rigid, designed with predictable logic loops. Evan grabbed a shard of metal from the floor and tossed it down an adjacent tunnel. The sound echoed sharply. The drone pivoted instantly. Evan sprinted the opposite direction. On the observation platform, the cadets hissed in confusion. Raig leaned forward. He runs, he muttered. He thinks he can escape the inevitable. But Evan wasn't running from the drone. He was running toward the next trap. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber with platforms suspended at uneven heights. Evan leapt onto the lowest one and pulled himself upward just as the drone burst into the room. It scanned the chamber again, clicking in agitation when it lost the human's heat trace. Evan crouched above it, analyzing its movements. The drone relied heavily on sound and motion. If he stayed above its scanning cone, he had a window of opportunity. He jumped. The drop wasn't graceful, but it was effective. Evan slammed onto the drone, forcing its claws into the stone floor. Sparks erupted as it struggled to realign its limbs. Evan ripped a panel off its back, seized the glowing memory filament and yanked hard. The drone spasmed, then collapsed in a twitching heap. The cadets erupted in shocked murmurs. Threx narrowed his eyes. He improvised. Evan didn't waste time. He sprinted deeper into the maze, dragging the drone's filament and scrap metal with him. Every moment counted. The gauntlet escalated based on time and performance. The longer he survived, the more aggressive the drones would become. A distant thud echoed through the corridors. Another drone dropped from the ceiling vents, this one larger and equipped with bladed forearms. Evan slid behind a broken wall panel, keeping low as it swept its sensors back and forth. With slow, deliberate movements, he knotted the memory filament between two metal rods. Then he made himself visible. The drone charged, blades slicing the air. Evan bolted sideways at the last moment, and the hunter barreled straight into the filament trap. The wire tightened around its optical housing, sparks flying as the system malfunctioned. Evan smashed its sensor cluster with a metal rod, sending it crashing to the floor. 2 kills, but both had required timing and risk. He could already feel the gauntlet learning from him, adjusting, evolving. The corridors shifted. Walls sealed behind him, others opened ahead. The temperature dropped. The hum of machinery grew deeper, almost organic. The gauntlet's final phase approached, and Evan knew it. The maw awaited him. He entered a cavernous arena where the floor was littered with claw marks, gouges, and crushed plating from drones that had been destroyed by something far more vicious than training algorithms. A low rumble shook the chamber. Raig's throat tightened as he watched from above. "The maw is waking," he said. "He cannot fight that thing. It hunts our kind." Evan picked up a broken vent pipe, listening to the distant growl building in the shadows. The maw was a beast engineered to simulate primal predator instinct. No programming, only pure adaptive aggression. It moved like a serpent and struck with the power of a battering ram. Even the strongest cadets feared it. A surge of breath escaped the darkness as the creature slithered into view, its body plated with armor-like scales, its maw lined with rotating teeth. Evan exhaled slowly. "All right," he whispered. "Let's dance." The creature lunged. Evan rolled beneath it, letting its own momentum carry it into a support column. The chamber shook from the impact. He struck the pipe against a sparking power node, igniting it with a burst of electric heat. The makeshift torch hissed and spat sparks. The maw recoiled from the light. Not because it feared fire, but because its optical receptors struggled with sudden bursts of brightness. Evan darted from cover to cover, flicking embers into exposed wiring, triggering small explosions of light that forced the creature to track him erratically. Frustrated, the maw charged blindly. Evan sprinted toward the damaged scaffolding. As the beast lunged again, Evan leapt aside. The maw's enormous mass struck the weakened beams, collapsing them onto its back. Metal screeched as the beast crashed to the ground, pinned just long enough for Evan to drive the electrified pipe into the exposed joint of its armor. The creature convulsed violently, then went still. The chamber lights shifted from red to white. The gauntlet had recognized his victory. Above, silence gripped the observation deck. Cadets stared, unable to understand how a soft-skinned outsider had bested a creature born from their deadliest instincts. Raig's jaw tightened, not in anger but in bewildered respect. Evan wiped dust from his face, touched a hand to his racing heart, and walked toward the exit as the doors unlocked before him. He didn't raise his fists in triumph. He didn't gloat. He had survived because survival was what humans did best. But as he stepped into the sunlight and saw the stunned faces above, he felt the shift, subtle yet seismic. Today the Academy had expected a meal. Instead it got a question it couldn't answer. What exactly was a human? The Academy summoned Evan before the suns had fully risen, their pale light casting long shadows through the council hall's arching rib-like supports. The room was colder than the corridors outside, as if the walls themselves disapproved of his presence. 3 instructors stood behind a curved obsidian table, their scaled faces set in expression somewhere between suspicion and reluctant interest. Raig stood nearby, arms locked behind his back, observing the proceedings with unreadable intensity. Commander Threx addressed him first. "The predation gauntlet was not designed for your kind," he said, each word dropping like a stone. "Your survival has raised questions." Evan remained standing despite the single-seat position before him like a trap. "Ask them," he said. Instructor Vekri, a sharp-featured avian predator, tapped her talons against the table. "We reviewed the recordings. You displayed no traditional predatory traits, no natural weapons, no instinctive aggression, yet you defeated threats that routinely kill apex species. Explain how." Evan considered his answer carefully. He wasn't here to boast. Boasting got soldiers killed. Predators rely on strength, speed, or natural advantages, he said. Humans don't. We survive by recognizing patterns, adapting faster than whatever's trying to kill us, and using the environment to shift the odds. Raig tilted his head, studying him with renewed curiosity. Yet you ran from the drones. I didn't run, Evan said. I repositioned. A low murmur rippled among the instructors. The distinction was subtle, but in this academy precision meant power. Threx's gaze sharpened. Your species fears everything. Our data confirms elevated cortisol responses in all human subjects. Fear is your defining weakness. No, Evan corrected. Fear is our trigger. It tells us when to get creative. That earned a pause, small but significant. The instructors exchanged glances, and for the first time, the hall felt less like a courtroom and more like a classroom waiting for an unexpected lesson. Vekri leaned forward. Then tell us this, do humans consider themselves predators? Evan gave a faint, humorless smile. No. We consider ourselves survivors. And the thing about survivors is that they outlast predators when predators get too confident. That line struck something in Raig. His eyes narrowed, not in scorn but in thought. A warrior raised on dominance and strength suddenly confronted a perspective where weakness wasn't a flaw but a weapon. Before the instructors could ask more, an alarm blared overhead. The lights flickered from white to amber. Threx snapped his wrist console open, growling as he read the alert. There has been an attack. A frontier outpost was destroyed overnight. Raig's posture stiffened. By whom? Raiders? Threx shook his head. No. The signature is unknown. Vekri expanded the hologram into the center of the hall. Grainy footage revealed collapsed structures, scorched frameworks, and deep gouges carved into alloy walls. Too deep for claws, too clean for energy weapons. A shadow slithered across one frame, nearly invisible except for a ripple of motion. Evan stepped closer. That wasn't a drone. It was not, Threx said. It was a Nithar. The name meant nothing to Evan, but Raig reacted instantly, scales along his neck rising in unease. They're real, he whispered. I thought they were myths. They were, Threx said. Until now. Evan crossed his arms. What are they? Apex hunters, Raig replied, his voice lower than usual. Adaptation incarnate. Stronger than any cadet, stealthier than any machine. They hunt by reading intent and responding before you act. Evan's brow furrowed. Predictive behavior? Yes, Vekri said. They kill before you decide to fight. They treat every living thing as prey. Evan studied the footage again. The way the creature moved, not rushed, not reckless but deliberate, reminded him of the Maw, yet more refined. Less brute force and more calculated malice. How many outposts? 3, Threx said. Within 2 cycles. And why are we only hearing about this now? Panic weakens empires, Vekri said simply. The room fell into a weighted silence. The Academy prided itself on producing the galaxy's fiercest warriors, but the footage revealed a threat that outmatched raw strength. Raig's expression hardened, not with fear but with something more complicated. Frustration perhaps. Vulnerability. A predator forced to admit there existed something higher on the food chain. Threx ended the projection. The Council is assembling strike teams. Raig Vosk has been recommended to lead one. Raig bowed his head, but his gaze drifted toward Evan. There was a question forming behind his eyes, one he didn't yet know how to voice. Threx continued, we need individuals capable of anticipating the Nithar's behavior. Our species think in straight lines. The Nithar think in spirals. Vekri's gaze flicked toward Evan. And humans, it seems, think in chaos. Evan exhaled slowly. He recognized the tone. They weren't interrogating him anymore. They were evaluating him. Raig stepped forward. Commander, he said. I request that the human join my strike team. Threx's eyes widened slightly. You request the prey species volunteer? He is not prey, Raig said, voice cutting through the hall with surprising conviction. He is something else. He sees in ways we do not. Evan met Raig's gaze, reading conviction where earlier there had been mockery. Something significant had shifted between them in the aftermath of the gauntlet. Raig did not admire him, predators did not admire prey, but he respected him. That mattered more. Threx considered the request with visible hesitation. The human is untested in field conditions against Apex-class threats. That's why you should send me, Evan said. The gauntlet showed I can handle unpredictability. If these creatures analyze intent, You need someone whose behavior they can't map. Are you volunteering, Threx asked, or proving a point? Both, Evan answered. Another silence passed, heavier than the last. Finally, Threx placed his hand against the obsidian table, sealing the decision. Very well. Evan Hale will accompany the strike team. Raig gave a curt nod, not of gratitude but of acknowledgement, warriors recognizing a shared necessity. Evan breathed in, steady and controlled. The mission would be lethal. The Nithar moved like nightmares made real. But the Academy had taught him a valuable truth. Predators failed when they assumed superiority. Humans thrived when they assumed nothing. The strike briefing would begin within the hour. Evan followed Raig out of the hall, footsteps echoing in the long corridor. Raig slowed, glancing at him with an expression that held no hint of mockery now. I want to understand your kind, Raig said. Evan shrugged lightly. Then try to keep up. Raig's rumbling laugh filled the hall, surprising even himself. For the first time since Evan arrived, the tension between them felt less like confrontation and more like the early formation of something else. Respect, perhaps even kinship. But as they stepped outside and the wind carried the scent of distant storms, both knew this fragile alliance would soon be tested. The Nithar weren't waiting. They were hunting. The strike vessel sliced through the void with a quiet hum, its interior dimmed to a battle-ready gloom. Evan stood at the tactical table beside Raig, reviewing the holographic reconstruction of the attacked outpost. The image flickered with distorted heat signatures, twisted debris, and the faint silhouettes of bodies that had not survived long enough to raise alarms. Every detail painted the same picture. The Nithar didn't kill for territory or resources. They killed with purpose. Raig's taloned finger traced the path of destruction. The attack pattern is irregular. No formation, no territorial marking, no trophy retrieval. That's because they weren't attacking, Evan said. They were testing. The room fell silent as the rest of the strike team absorbed that idea. It unsettled them. Predators were not accustomed to being studied. Commander Threx's voice crackled from the comm embedded in the ceiling. Team 1, prepare for descent. Scans show 0 thermal readings. Assume camouflage. Assume silence. Assume you are already being hunted. Raig caught Evan's expression. You look calm. I'm not, Evan replied. But calm doesn't help me survive. Awareness does. Raig considered that, then nodded once. In their time preparing, he had begun to understand the human's strange logic. Fear sharpened him rather than dulled him. It was a trait Raig found both baffling and strangely admirable. The drop bay opened, revealing the ruined outpost below. Twisted metal jutted like broken teeth from the ground. The structures collapsed inward as if something massive had moved through them with surgical brutality. The strike team descended in disciplined formation, landing in a crouched arc. Evan landed last, boots crunching on dried dust coated with an unsettling sheen. Keep noise to a minimum, Evan whispered. If they're still here, they'll know we arrived. Raig moved beside him, scanning the shadows. Nithar prefer ambush. They strike when attention breaks. Then let's not break ours. They advanced through the remains of the central hub. The air felt wrong, stale, lacking the usual electric tension of a battlefield. It was the kind of quiet that happened only after something had fed. Evan knelt beside a collapsed wall and ran his fingers along a deep gouge. The edges were smooth, almost polished. Not claws. Not blades. Something else. They cut through this like soft tissue. They learn, Raig murmured. Every cycle, every encounter, they adapt. Even our strongest warriors avoid them. Adapting means they observe first, Evan said. Which means they're watching us. The team tightened formation. A faint clicking noise echoed from an alley of shattered alloy beams. The sound was so delicate it could have been metal settling, except it was rhythmic. Evan signaled for the others to halt. Don't react, he said softly. They read intent. If you move with purpose, they'll strike before you finish the motion. Raig's jaw clenched. Then what do we do? Evan slowly picked up a loose shard of plating and tossed it casually over his shoulder. The sound pinged across the rubble. The clicking paused. A thin shimmer rippled along a wall as something cloaked shifted position. There, Evan whispered. They track intention. Not distraction. The shimmer moved. Raig lunged forward. Contact. The creature dropped its camouflage, revealing a long, sinewed form with obsidian skin that flowed like liquid armor. Its limbs were jointed in unnatural ways, allowing it to pivot mid-air, redirecting its trajectory in an instant. Raig's claws met its carapace with a metallic screech. The Nithar twisted, wrapping around his arm like a serpent preparing to crush. Evan didn't hesitate. He ran straight toward the creature, not with a direct attack, but with an unpredictable series of movements, zigzags, abrupt stops, feints. The Nithar tried to read him, stuttering between trajectories, its predictive sense overwhelmed by his patternless approach. Raig seized the opening, driving his elbow into the creature's flank and forcing it off balance. Evan leapt, slamming a metal beam into its sensory ridge. The Nithar screeched, a piercing metallic wail that rattled the outpost's remains. The creature retreated with astonishing speed, vanishing behind a collapsed generator tower. Raig breathed heavily. "You confused it." "That's what humans do," Evan said. "We don't make sense." Raig chuckled, short and sharp. "Useful." Before they could regroup, Threx's voice erupted over the comm. "Team 1, movement detected beneath your position. Multiple signatures." Evan's stomach sank. It wasn't hunting alone. The ground shuddered. Slabs of fractured metal clattered as shapes crawled from beneath them. 3 no for Nithar, their movements fluid and eerily synchronized. They spread out, forming a crescent around the team. Raig stepped to Evan's side. "We hold the line." "No," Evan said quietly. "We make them chase us." Raig stared at him. "Explain." "They rely on reading our intentions. So we give them too many. Scatter patterns. Random movement. Force them to split their predictive focus until they can't keep up." Raig didn't like it. No predator fought by becoming untethered chaos. But he trusted the human's strange instincts. Evan raised his hand. "Move on my call." The Nithar tensed, bodies coiled in preparation. Evan waited for the smallest shift in the wind, the signal that the creatures had locked onto their collective intent. Now, the team erupted in a chaotic burst, diving, weaving, separating into unpredictable paths. Evan sprinted toward the cooling chambers he'd spotted earlier on the outpost map. The unit still hummed faintly, autonomous backup circuits maintaining minimal power. "Raig with me." Raig bounded after him, smashing through debris with brute force while Evan darted between obstacles. The Nithar followed, each adjusting to a different target. Evan's lungs burned, but he forced himself to change rhythm. Slow steps, sudden leaps, halts, reversals. The closest Nithar faltered, its head twitching in confused recalibration. Evan skidded into the cooling chamber, sliding behind the central pillar and yanking the emergency override. Frosted vapor flooded the floor. Raig barreled inside a heartbeat later, slamming the door shut with both arms. The first Nithar slammed into the barrier. The second clawed at the seams. The third climbed onto the ceiling, seeking an opening. Evan triggered the chamber's manual purge. Sub-zero vapor blasted outward, freezing the creature's limbs on contact. Their sleek motions faltered, slowed, then stopped entirely as the cold locked their adaptive muscles. Raig stared at the immobilized monsters. "You trapped them." "No," Evan corrected. "We bought time." A distant roar echoed across the ruins. Deeper. Heavier. Something larger than the others had sensed the shift in the hunt. Raig took a step back, muscles tensing. Another Nithar? Evan looked toward the shadows beyond the chamber. The temperature dropped further, but this time not from the machinery. "No," he said. "Something worse." The roar came again, closer. Whatever had answered the battle was not coming to hunt. It was coming to reclaim its pack. The academy hummed with a tension that had nothing to do with training. Months had passed since the Nithar engagement, and the corridors no longer whispered doubt but bristled with cautious curiosity. Evan walked through the main hall, shoulders straight, stride measured, yet every cadet who passed him paused, claws clicking softly against metal floors, glances following him as if he were the apex now, not an anomaly. Raig walked beside him, silent except for the low rumble that had become his signature. The bond between them had strengthened, not in friendship, not quite, but in mutual recognition of skill and instinct. Raig still exuded predator dominance, but Evan had proven that strength alone was no longer the measure of survival. He had taught them something the Academy had never intended: adaptability, chaos, and human ingenuity. The council hall was crowded that morning. Threx, Vekri, and several other instructors stood at the front, their expressions oscillating between pride and disbelief. Holographic projections above them displayed mission reports, battle analysis, and casualty records from the Nithar encounter. Every predator in attendance understood the unspoken truth: humans had led the operation, and they had survived. Threx's voice boomed, drawing attention. "Evan Hale, you have redefined what it means to be an apex species. Not by strength, but by thought, adaptability, and courage under unimaginable circumstances. The Council recognizes that the Academy, and the galaxy, must no longer dismiss humans as mere prey. Evan inclined his head. He didn't seek accolades, but the weight of their acknowledgement settled differently than he expected. This was not validation, it was responsibility. The predators were watching, learning, and in some ways, waiting to see if the human would falter in the expectation he now carried. Rhaeg shifted beside him, tilting his head. "You are not like us," he said. His voice lacked mockery, replaced with a genuine question. "Do humans fear anything?" Evan's gaze swept across the hall. Cadets and instructors alike held their breaths. "Everything," he said. "And that is exactly why we win." The hall erupted in a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Fear, Rhaeg realized, had never driven predators to victory the way humans channeled it into action. It was a weapon sharpened by the unknown, wielded by instinct, guided by logic. The apex was no longer defined solely by strength. Threx stepped forward, placing a hand on the console. "The Council has decreed that humans will participate as instructors in the Academy, teaching strategy, unpredictability, and adaptive tactics to all cadets. You will train our warriors as partners, not prey." A murmur rippled through the room. Rhaeg's eyes narrowed slightly, registering the challenge implicit in this decision. Authority had shifted, subtly but irreversibly. He didn't speak, but his posture relaxed, acknowledging that this human, this soft-skinned anomaly, was no threat to his dominance. Instead, he saw potential, a new kind of predator rising from an unexpected source. Evan studied the cadets. Many of them shifted uneasily, struggling with the cognitive dissonance of taking lessons from someone physically weaker than themselves. He understood. He had felt the same way in the gauntlet, underestimated at every turn, surviving because he embraced unpredictability instead of fighting with raw power. He stepped forward and addressed the assembly. "You have trained your bodies to perfection," he began. "Your strength, speed, and natural weapons are unmatched. But the galaxy doesn't wait for perfection. It punishes predictability. I am here not to replace your instincts but to expand them. To show you that the apex isn't always the strongest, it's the one who adapts, anticipates, and survives." The cadets' ears twitched, claws flexing. Some stared in disbelief, others in budding admiration. The room's energy shifted, no longer tense with doubt but alive with curiosity. For the first time, predators considered the possibility that they could learn from prey. Rhaeg stepped forward, placing a scaled hand on Evan's shoulder. "Then teach them," he said. "Teach them to think beyond instinct." Evan nodded. "We'll start immediately." Weeks passed in a blur of drills, simulations, and controlled chaos. Humans introduced patterns predators had never encountered, strategies that broke the cadence of brute force. Cadets learned to anticipate unpredictability, to fight without assuming superiority. Rhaeg became his second in command, the perfect bridge between raw predator instincts and human improvisation. Together they transformed the Academy into something new, a fusion of ferocity and intelligence, reflex and reason. One afternoon, a simulation emergency activated unexpectedly. The holographic Nithar threat appeared, testing all cadets simultaneously. Panic spread like wildfire until Evan barked orders that forced them to think, to adapt, to anticipate in ways the simulation hadn't accounted for. Rhaeg led the front lines, claws striking in precise, disciplined patterns while following Evan's improvisational directives. The cadets moved as a coordinated force, blending human logic with predator instinct. The simulation ended. Silence filled the chamber before it erupted into acclaim. Threx exhaled, a deep rumble of approval. "This is beyond anything the Academy has seen." Evan smiled faintly, brushing dust from his jacket. He looked at Rhaeg, and for the first time there was no hierarchy, no predator, no human, only two warriors who had learned to trust each other in the crucible of survival. The Council convened once more. "Humans are now recognized as Tier 1 apex species," Threx announced. "Your methods, your unpredictability, have saved lives and redefined tactics across the galaxy." Evan's gaze swept the assembly. Cadets stared in awe, some struggling to reconcile the truth with their lifelong instincts. Rhaeg's shadow loomed beside him, silent approval radiating without a single word. Outside the Academy, the suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched over the sprawling training grounds. Evan and Rhaeg stood atop the observation tower, looking over the labyrinths, the arenas, and the battle-tested corridors that now hummed with a new energy. "You think they'll accept this?" Rhaeg asked quietly. Evan's eyes narrowed against the fading light. "They don't have to," They'll adapt, or they won't survive. That's the galaxy's way. Reg exhaled a low, amused rumble. You're stubborn. Evan grinned faintly. Fear makes humans stubborn. It's what we do with it that counts. A distant roar echoed across the training grounds, the wind carrying the vibration through steel and stone. The Nithar threat was gone, for now, but the galaxy still had predators to challenge, battles to fight, and chaos to navigate. Evan turned to Reg. Are you ready for the next one? Reg's gaze hardened, claws flexing. Always. But this time we face it together. The sun sank completely, painting the horizon with fire and shadow. Together, human and predator stood as apex. Not because they were born that way but because they chose to rise above, to innovate, to survive. The Academy, the galaxy, and even the stars themselves seemed to pause, acknowledging that the era of predictable hunters had ended. Evan smiled, letting the weight of survival, responsibility, and newfound respect settle. Tomorrow they would train, they would fight, and they would survive again. But tonight they had claimed the true apex. Not the strongest, not the swiftest, but the ones who could adapt when everything else tried to kill them. And in the silence, the lesson resonated across the galaxy. Human ingenuity was now an unstoppable predator.